All right, so today I'm doing a special edition from the Institute in what would have been our seminar room. And today we're going to be going a bit deeper into the notion of gift relationships. How do they differ from market relationships and what might their advantages be? And this session is a case study on blood, on whether we should sell blood and leave it up to the market, or whether there are some advantages to really keeping this as a different form of exchange. So this session is inspired by this book, The Gift Relationship. This comes from an author called Richard Titmuss, and it was extremely influential. It really changed the way that a lot of countries approached their blood policy. The book was originally published in 1970 during the hepatitis crisis. And then, of course, as the HIV crisis gained traction in the 1980s, it became even more popular and influential. And Titmuss basically offers us a variety of arguments to suggest that a donor-based blood system is superior to a paid one. And he does this by comparing the, at the time, completely donor-based blood system in the UK to the, at the time, completely paid blood system in the US. And he has a variety of arguments to show that the donor-based system is superior. Some of these are empirical arguments. He says that the US system is less efficient, it leads to more wastage, and it leads to more transmission of disease, which is what got people really interested in these ideas. But he also has some kind of interesting ideas about what altruistic exchange can do in our society. He really thought that this plays a very important role and that blood is a really good way to encourage altruism and foster connections in society. So Titmuss's first problem with the paid blood system in the US is that it was extremely exploitative. He said that a disproportionate number of very poor people in the US were selling their blood, whereas in the UK, people were coming from a wider spectrum of society. He argued that...
Sorry, Lucy. Sorry, this is just not exploitative.
Philip, what are you doing here? This isn't your week.
Well, sorry, but I'm very much in favor of a market in blood, especially right now. I mean, in this current pandemic, demand for blood is rising, while supply is exactly the same as before. So I think the only way to increase the supply is to pay people for giving their blood.
But what about what Titmuss said about this being exploitative? I mean, he really showed that when we're looking at the US, for example, where the blood system is completely paid, people were donating, the people who were donating were disproportionately poor. This seems to suggest that they were really being forced into selling their blood. They weren't doing it voluntarily.
I don't think that's a problem that's specific to the case of blood. I mean, it's this standard argument against markets, but come on. It's just not a good one.
Well, what about this idea? Titmuss really gave us a lot of arguments to suggest that there was more disease transmission in the US blood system. Because obviously if people need the money, they have an incentive to lie on their donor applications when they're asked if they've engaged in risky behaviour. In the UK, you didn't have that.
Well, there are many more recent studies that have basically debunked this claim. Also, I mean, especially in the system in the US, people are screened a lot, and of course this has also changed since the time when Titmuss made his arguments. So they are screened in order to exclude these kinds of situations.
Well, what about his most interesting claim? So you've refuted these empirical claims, but what about this claim about the gift relationship and how important it is in society? So the idea here is that Titmuss thought that we need to design institutions to foster the good in people. That the way that we design our social institutions can really have a role in how people act. He thought people weren't naturally altruistic, and this is something that's often assumed by market advocates as well, that people are naturally selfish. But he said if we set up our institutions in the right way, then we can encourage people to behave with more solidarity towards one another and with more altruism. And blood is a really good way to do this. He suggested because blood is such a small thing to give, it really is not that much of a burden on you, but since it provides such a benefit to the person who receives it, this is really something that people will be so grateful for receiving that it will leave them wanting to go out and do altruistic things for others. So this is a kind of gift relationship. It creates, as we saw last week, these ongoing relationships of reciprocity between people. But Titmuss really saw this as operating in society as a whole, rather than just between two people. Someone gives you blood and then you feel more of a connection to others and more of a sense that you want to go out and pass that on, help others as well.
Well, you can still do that. I mean, of course, in the US system, you can still go there and donate your blood. The market just simply offers you another choice, just to sell your blood. But no one keeps you from still donating your blood.
So you're suggesting we can have two blood systems operating parallel, like we have in Germany, one donor-based system and one system in which people are paid.
Of course.
But the problem here is if you allow people to sell blood, the gift is just going to take on an entirely new meaning here. So for Titmuss's argument to work, really the idea is that blood needs to have this very special meaning. It needs to represent the gift of life. This is the only way that when people receive it, they'll really feel this sense of gratitude and connection towards others. If we say, well, you know, you can also sell blood and the price is 20 euros for one blood donation, the gift will just cease to have this meaning. It will just become then worth 20 euros. When someone receives a pint of blood, even, you know, as a donation, they'll just think of this as equivalent to 20 euros. Rather nice, but not something that would really foster this sense of connection between people.
Why should you think that introducing price will corrupt the meaning in any way? I mean, if I give my wife a gift for her birthday, I will obviously buy that gift. But you know, it's carefully chosen for her. It doesn't matter that this gift has a monetary value. So it wouldn't be the same if I just gave her the money instead. You know, it's the motivation for the gift giving that matters and what it expresses. And if people donate blood for free out of a spirit of altruism and generosity, then this meaning will still be retained, even if a price is attached to the item.
Well, you are right that this is a very common argument when we're talking about markets. I mean, we've encountered this before, the idea that we can't just give someone 20 euros instead of some gift, that they're just going to have different meanings. But we can still give a gift that has a monetary value attached without corrupting the meaning of the gift. But what about the motivation for giving blood? I mean, it seems just very unlikely that people are going to keep giving their blood away for free if they can get 20 euros for it. It just seems like if you allow the option of paying people for their blood, this is going to crowd out any altruistic donors.
Well, I think this dichotomy is a mistake. You can, you know, operate on the market but still have altruistic reasons for doing so. On the other hand, you could also have selfish reasons while acting in a different institution than the market, right? And if you're giving blood, maybe you're doing it because it makes you feel good about yourself, or because you like, I don't know, the attention of the nurses, right? Or the free checkup. You know, here in Germany, you get offered a free meal after you donate your blood. So it's simply not the case that this has to be a pure act of altruism.
Yeah, this free meal thing, we would never allow that in Australia. We're really, really into this Titmuss idea. But I think really what you're missing here is what the gift means to the recipient, not just what the motivation of the donor is. Even if someone gives out of a sense of generosity, this is just a small sacrifice to them. Really, it's just basically a half an hour of their time, minor inconvenience, being pricked by a needle. But to receive blood can really be the difference between life or death. We have to take into account what this gift means to the recipient as well. When you receive something like that, some gift of life, by someone who wasn't paid to do it. This is really the kind of thing that can foster a sense of altruism and gratitude between you and your fellow man. And just to return to your point about the gift before, the fact that this is between strangers is really important. When you give a gift to your wife, you're already operating in an established relationship. And this can mean that you can give something that can be an expression of your particular feelings and connection to this person. But when we're talking about connections between strangers, we're not usually motivated to act in an altruistic and kind way towards strangers. This is something that's really, really tenuous. If we want to set it up, it's the kind of thing that can be really easily corrupted by introducing a monetary incentive into the equation. We need to allow the opportunity for people to give in a generous spirit, and this is just something that could really be destroyed by introducing a price here.
Who is right? This seems to depend on two questions, right? The first one being, can blood be used as a means to encouraging bonds of friendship between strangers? Can altruistic donation play this role of forming connections between strangers and fostering more altruism in society?
And the second aspect here is, should this be something that we're aiming for? So even if we accept the idea that blood can in fact foster these lasting connections between strangers, like Titmuss argues, is this something that we should be setting up our social institutions to promote? So this is a very controversial topic. There are lots of people weighing in on either side. Please tell us in the forums what you think. Who's right?